Hey, I'm Lauren from TastyPC.tv and today I'm doing a review of the Corsair Graphite 760T, which was announced at CES and is available in either Arctic White or Black, or you can get a version with a solid side panel, which is the 730T, and that's a little bit cheaper, and I'll be taking a look at that in a separate video. But in this video I'm going to be looking at the Arctic White version of the 760T. So let's get started. So then with the Corsair 760T, firstly we've got the front I/O panel. So we've got the headphone and Wi-Fi jack and then this fan button here, which changes the fans plugged into it between performance mode and quiet mode. Now I don't actually know for sure, but I'd imagine what it does is changes your fans between 12 volts and either 7 or 5 volts. But because it doesn't actually tell you, I think that if you're using quite quiet fans and you can't see the fans, then I think it might be quite hard to tell if you're actually in performance mode or quiet mode. But here we've got two USB 2 ports, two USB 3 ports, a reset button and a power button. And I do actually really like this. And I prefer it to kind of the front I/O and power buttons you get on some of the other Corsair cases, and this does actually light up. Down from there we've then got three 5.25-inch optical bays, and I know that a lot of people don't like optical bays and wish that case manufacturers would just not put them in cases anymore, but I do actually really like optical bays because I like using like bay pump reses when I'm water cooling and fan controllers and stuff. However, the fact that Corsair have put this button and kind of made the top panel like mainly for optical drives, I do think that's pretty stupid. Hardly anyone uses optical drive nowadays, and you know, I haven't had one of these buttons on a case since I was like 12, and there was one on like the family HPPC. So I don't know why they've done that. And the fact that it's actually on the 760T rather than the 730T makes me think that Corsair think that this is like a premium feature, in which case if Corsair you think that, then you're deluded. And now when I do the build and I've got a big resin here, I'm going to have to take one of these covers and switch it with this one so I don't have to have this button here anymore. So then below that we've got a dust filtered fan grille, which is completely plain because the Corsair logo's down here rather than across the bottom like it was with the 600T, and this just clicks off like so. Now I've owned three 600Ts, and with one of them the clip broke here, so it doesn't sit on the kind of the front of the case properly. However, this one does seem to be kind of stronger, so I think this one will be okay. But then behind that we've got two modified AF140Ls, which have got white LEDs in each of the corners, and they do look really nice when it's on. But if you remove those, you've got space for either two 120 or two 140mm fans, and I'll talk about rad options later on in the video. So looking at the top of the case, we've got this plastic cover which covers the fan mounts, and it reminds me of the one you get in the 330R, just without the sound deadening. And this is held on by 12 magnets, and obviously while it's on no air can get in, but when it's off, obviously air can get to the fan mounts. And with that off, you can see space for either three 120mm or three 140mm fans, and you've got these like rubber washers for the 120mm ones to help stop like vibrations and stuff. We've also got what looks like a fan mount here for a larger fan, but it's slightly too small for 180, so I'm not entirely sure what it's there for, if it's for anything at all. Now I'm not going to cover radiator options yet, I'll do that later in the video. But given that you've got like all of these, you should be able to like offset mount a rad if you wanted to allow for thicker rads than you otherwise would be able to. And like if you were a modder, you could rivet out the optical bays and maybe fit like a thick 360 rad, well a thicker 360 rad than you otherwise would be able to. But I'm not sure about thicknesses yet because I haven't got round to putting any rads in this case yet. But something that I'd probably do if I was going to be air cooling this case or having like a H8EI on the cases like rear fan mount is if you've got one of those fan controllers which lets you turn the fans off completely, then like while I was just like on the internet I would turn these fans off and have the cover on so dust can't like fall in, but then if I'm like gaming, take the cover off and have the fans on. It's probably what I would like how I'd have this case. So then moving on to the rear of the case, you can see where the top and the bottom is curved round and riveted down. We've then got a mount for either a 120 or 140mm fan, and Corsair provided an AF140L, or this one's just standard, it doesn't have the LEDs. We've then got ventilation across the top, the hole for the rear I/O shield, 9 PCI expansion slots, so you could have 4 GPUs in your rig if you wanted to, 2 external water cooling holes, and the hole for the power supply. Now the 760T actually has the tallest off the floor feet that I've seen on a case in person, which is perfect for you guys who like to put your PC on your carpet. But we've got a dust filter for the power supply, and it's actually held in place pretty well, so it's not going to like fly out or move around when you're carrying your PC around. We've then also got a 120mm fan mount, which is got screwed into it the left hard drive cage, which is kind of like a mounting design that some of the Fractal Design cases use, using the 120mm fan mount to secure the hard drive cage into place, which means that if you undo these 4 screws, you can just remove the left hard drive cage, and then these 2 screws are for the right hard drive cage. The feet are also completely removable if you undo the screws, and they have rubber pads to help stop vibrations, etc. So then moving on to one of the biggest selling features of the 760T, we've got this really sexy side panel, which is basically just a sheet of tinted acrylic with a metal strip running across the top and the bottom. And basically when Corsair released this case, they said that they noticed when people took pictures of their builds, they did it with the side panel off, so they thought, why not make the side panel just like a massive window? It's got a latch here to allow you to open it, and a magnet at the top and a magnet at the bottom. And the door does open completely, so if you're doing like a bit of maintenance, you can just lay your case down and open the door completely. You don't need to take it off if you don't want to. However, if you do want to take it off, it's easy to just lift it straight off the latches and put it back on. And the latches are held on with screws, so you can remove them if you want to. But the acrylic seems to be stuck to the metal pieces with adhesive, and it does seem quite good quality, but I imagine that if you want a mod, then it may be possible to kind of pry off the metal strips to like paint them or something. Although I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not going to give it a go myself, although if I did, I'd probably try and like plasti dip the metal or something. But with the acrylic, it does have, unfortunately, quite a bit of flex to it. So then with the rear side panel, of course I've opted to use this kind of mirrored-y piano black finish rather than a tinted window, which is pretty cool because if like you're at a LAN, it means you can see yourself while you're putting on a headset, so you don't like mess up your hair. But obviously it hides your cables, as, you know. But if you're one of these people that's really good at cable management and you really want to kind of show it off, then the window is actually interchangeable. So you could probably pick up another one of these kind of like the clear side panels from the other side, and then put one on this side so you can see all of your cables. Now with this side panel, I noticed that it's actually using 2 magnets at the top and at the bottom rather than 1. So of course I've obviously realised that it's going to need more magnetic strength when obviously with all the cables pushed up against it. Now with the 600T, it was kind of like a TARDIS when it came to cable management, so I will have to see once I've got a build in it what this case is like. So taking a look inside the 760T, obviously I've got the white version with like the white frame, but it has got a black motherboard tray, which I do really like. I do think that when case manufacturers make a white case and like the entire thing's white, it just kind of looks a bit like a fridge. So I do like the black and white contrast. I think it looks much better like this. But obviously we've got the 3 5.25-inch optical bays, which use a toolless mounting system, and the top one sits further back to allow for that button on the top optical bay cover, which I was actually thinking to myself earlier, given this case is released like early April, maybe it's like an April Fool's joke or something, hopefully. But below that you can mount 4 solid state drives, which allows you to kind of show them off, which I think is cool, but I'm going to talk to you more about that when we're looking at the back of the case in a second, because you mount them via the back. But yeah, so below that we've got the 2 hard drive cages, which are removable, as I said before, and if you remove the little bit they're sat on, then you can actually stack them. So you could have like 2 at the back, or if you bought like a third one, you could have 3 up there, or you could have the 2 in the middle there if you had like a short enough graphics card, or you had a build without a graphics card. But yeah, so each of the cages has got 3 hard drive bays, which allow you to fit either 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch hard drives or solid state drives. Now, if you want to keep this bottom hard drive cage in, for the power supply, the longest that I could fit was the AX1200i, which is 200mm long, but even then the cables were pretty tight, so if you want to keep the bottom hard drive cage in, then I wouldn't recommend putting a power supply any longer in. With graphics card length clearance, now with no hard drive cages in, you've got a massive 46cm, but if you've got a hard drive cage like up there, then it goes down to 34cm, and if you've got a card that's going to come down like to these bottom slots, then you are going to have to remove this hard drive cage, unless you've got like a really short graphics card that doesn't come out like past your motherboard. But here we can see the front I/O and USB cables, which are black, which is nice, and we've also got 5 grommeted cable management holes, which are far enough away from the motherboard standoffs, which means that you should be able to fit any ATX or XL-ATX motherboard without any issues. And Corsair have pre-applied the standoffs for an ATX board for you, which is Nice of them. And then we've got this one in the middle, which I do always love this when Corsair do it, because it means that you can kind of put the motherboard on it and it won't move around before you've put any of the screws in. It kind of holds it in place, which is always useful. So yeah, we've got a large cutout for fit a CPU cooler backplate on the motherboard when it's in the case, which is a lot bigger than some of the ones I've seen in cases. Like in some cases it's too small or slightly in the wrong positions, meaning that you still have to fit a cooler backplate to the motherboard before you can fit the motherboard in the case. But even though it is such a large hole, the motherboard tray does still seem to be really sturdy. Now another thing that I was thinking earlier is it is a shame that this is just a standard AF140L, because obviously you're going to have this really nice like white LED glow from the front of the case. It would have been nice to have a glow this side too, and then have the whole case like glowing this white. I think that would look really nice. So then looking at the back of the case, we've got about 20mm of space to work with for cable management between the back of the motherboard tray and the rear side panel. We've also got plenty of cable tie mounts, and there's even two that side, which is great because a lot of cases don't have those, and I always like wish that there were some cable ties there. We've also got these holes down here, which I can only assume are like pre-drilled holes for a tube res, which would be pretty cool if they were. So it should be easy for, especially given the fact that behind the motherboard tray you've got the space to run like tubes and stuff, it should be very easy to people to get kind of a neat looking build cable management wise, but also if you're doing a water cooled loop. Although I've noticed recently that a lot of people, sometimes they replace motherboard tray or cover it to kind of get rid of some of these holes that they don't want, and I can see, because there's so many here, I can see this looking very kind of like holey and messy, so I can see a lot of people doing that here. We've also got this hole down the bottom, which would have been nice if they put a grommet on it. I realised that if they put one of those grommets on it, they would have had to have made it smaller, and then it might be difficult to kind of get the cables into your drives. But I just imagine if you remove that hard drive cage from the front, it might look silly just having this kind of hole here. But we've also got the 4 solid state drive mounts, which you could just slide the solid state drive into. And you can remove them completely if you want to, if you just don't want them in at all, or you can like remove them temporarily while you're doing cable management to the to your drives. And there's actually quite a lot of space between this hard drive cage and the mounts. You've got about 15mm space there for cables, which is great, and I do actually think these are one of the case's best features. And then we've also got plenty of space up here just for like your 8-pin CPU power cable and fan cables and stuff. So before I move on to the rad section, there was just quickly a few things that I wanted to cover. Firstly, this is what the bottom of the case looks like without any of the hard drive cages in. Now unfortunately this bottom 120mm fan mount doesn't have a dust filter. Also annoyingly, this is where Corsair have decided to put their quality control stamp, which I have tried to rub off and it has started to fade a little bit, but I just wish it wasn't somewhere quite as visible. And then also the included fan controller uses 4 4-pin connectors and SATA rather than Modex, which is much better, and I can actually see me using it myself. So it is now time to cover the water cooling capabilities of this case. So at the front here you can fit either a 120, a 140, a 240 or a 280mm radiator. And here I fit an Alpha Cool Monster 240 rad, which is about 86mm thick and currently the thickest water cooling radiator that you can buy. And I've got it in push pull, and even there, like Monster in push pull, I was still able to fit the left hard drive cage or a bottom 120 fan if I wanted, which is pretty impressive. So then at the top of the case you can fit either a 120, a 140, a 240, a 280 or a 360mm rad. And here I fit an Alpha Cool XT45 360, which is 45mm thick, with a single set of fans. And I did try to fit a 60mm thick rad with a single set of fans, but I found that because of this motherboard, because of the location of the 8-pin CPU connector and how high the heatsink goes, it actually wasn't possible. Like regardless of whether I plugged in the cable first and then tried to fit the rad, or fit the rad first and then tried to plug in the cable, they just wanted to occupy like the same space and time, which obviously isn't possible. So with this motherboard it just wasn't possible to go any thicker. However, if you do get a different motherboard where the 8-pin CPU connector is in a slightly different location, because I know it's lower on some boards, or you've got a heatsink that doesn't come quite as high, then it would be possible to fit a 60mm thick rad. So I'd say if you're planning on buying this case and getting a rad for the top, only get a 45 unless you know like for sure 100% that a 60mm thick rad's going to fit with your motherboard. But with this rad in the roof, you've still got the bottom 2 optical bays clear for like a fan controller or a bay res, and here you can see I've got a really thick bay res with a D5 pump, and then you've still got plenty of space here for a rear fan or like a 120 or 140mm rad. So I have now put a build inside the 760T, although as you can see I haven't quite finished it yet. Like, I haven't done the tubing and all of the cabling, and the reason is that with this build I actually plan on doing acrylic hardline tubing, which is something that I'm really excited to have a go at. I've wanted to do for so long now. But the Monsoon Pro hardline bending kit, which I'm planning on bending the tubes with, only arrived about roughly 12ish hours ago, and it's currently 5 AM on the 27th, and embargo is 1 PM today, so like I'm under no illusion that I'd be able to do the tubing in time to get the video up in time. But yeah, I'm really excited to get to play with it later and upload some videos for you, but it is just a little bit disappointing that obviously it's not all done for this video, but oh well. But this bit here, I realise this bit's a little bit crazy and it probably wouldn't work. I haven't decided what I want to do for this area yet, so I've just got kind of these fittings standing in for the time being. But yeah, that is 3 Poseidons. It is kind of nut job crazy, especially using like 3 graphics cards of like hybrid water air coolers with a hardline acrylic tubing, but I do like it. I'm not gonna lie. And also, being completely honest, Asus is the only graphics card manufacturer which is currently supporting the channel, and the Poseidon's the only watercool card they do. And I realised that I could have asked to, if it was possible for me to borrow like 3 direct C2 cards, and they've just bought 3 EK water blocks, but I'm way too skint for that. And even though I know that I really shouldn't, I really love how 3 Poseidons look together. Like, that is just so beautiful. You might completely disagree and think that I've completely lost it, but I just think that's really nice. I should probably mention that this like massive cables, even though it comes out quite far, there's no trouble like getting the side panel on. It doesn't actually touch it. But yeah, so I've got an XT45 360 and push in the top, a Monster 214 push pull in the front, and even then you've still got space for, I'm sorry, I'm really tired, space for a hard drive cage here if you want some hard drives, although it might be quite tight because of the cables, and I've got 120mm fan in the floor at the moment. You can see the hole, like, well, obviously you can see the hole. As I said before, it might look a little bit weird, and it does, but I imagine it would look a lot better if you managed to keep it clear so that no cables were like coming past the hole. But yeah, you've also got, you can see the top of the solid state giraffe just like poking his head out above the radiator. It's really cute. I do like that. What else should I mention? Okay, so normally when I do loops, what I always try and do is this tube at the back here, I always try and run it behind the back of the radiator to the bay res. And with this case, you do have plenty of space to do that behind the back of the rad, as long as you use, as long as you don't like massively thick with the tubing. But even then, it looks like you should have enough space to do it. Now with this case, you do really want to go with like an LED, or some lighting of some kind. Like, I was hoping to get a Corsair lighting kit. It hasn't arrived yet, but I did really want some lighting in this case. I was originally planning on using, because I don't have both a 114 and 120 white LED fan, I've only got them in either red or purple, and purple would look horrible with this build. And I didn't want to go for reds because I'm worried that this rig is already kind of starting to go a little bit over the top with the red, and I'm worried if I had red LEDs then it would have just made it kind of look a little bit garish. I mean, originally I had the Dom Plats in here, but they were just so silver that it just, they were always like overexposed and made everything else look really dark. So I've just swapped them for some G-Skill Trident X's, but I think they go with the build. But this, once again, look, the same with everything. It looks so much better in real life than it does on camera. But yeah, so with this case, it could definitely do with some lighting to make it just really look beautiful. So looking at the back of the case, you can see my incredibly beautiful cable management, which is just so superb. It doesn't stick out at all. I mean, there's just, it should have like a round of applause or something. Just okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, so even though it sticks out a bit, you can still get the rear side panel on fine, which was something that I was worried about, obviously, given that it uses magnets. But if you do a terrible job, like a really terrible, you've got a cable set to head job, cable management, then you're going to have issues getting it on. But really, that's the same with pretty much all cases, in fairness. But yeah, so I think that I'm just going to move on to the conclusion now. So concluding my thoughts on the 760T, I have to be honest, it doesn't offer obviously anything in like groundbreaking innovation. It's basically just a 750D with a different frame. So whether you like this case or not, or whether this case is right for you, kind of all comes down to what you think of the external design, which I do personally really love. I do really love how this case looks. I think I would probably prefer it in its black version. Seeing that I don't normally like white cases very much, I just think they kind of look like fridges, but I do like it. It's one of the few white cases that I've seen that I like. Obviously it does look a lot better in real life than it does on camera, because given that it's both white and black, you either have to get the white right, which then makes like all the dark bits kind of too dark to properly see detail, or you can make it match so that like the black bits are visible but then all the white's like overexposed. So it's not great for that, but I do really love the case, but you know, it's definitely a Marmite case. I think that while I and a lot of other people will like it and see just like this beautiful case, a lot of people will see maybe a case that's used too much plastic, or a side panel that's just going to be like a complete dust magnet. But if you don't like the exterior of this case, then you could get like the 730T or the 750D, you know, etc. Other cases, kind of with the same design. Now internally this case is pretty much faultless. I mean, it would be nice if like at the top there was just a little more space, so you could have a 60mm thick grad regardless of what motherboard you used, and if the bottom fan mount had a dust filter. Also if they got rid of the button on the optical bay cover. But other than that, it's a great case. It's a great design. It's a really beautiful case, and I would definitely recommend it to you if it's the sort of case that you're looking for and it's in your budget. So I'm going to give it my Sweet Award. Although you might have noticed that I'm filming this with the side panel off, and that's because even though Corsair's idea was that like to give you this massive side panel so that you could take pictures and stuff through it, if I had it on right now, all you'd see is this massive like bright studio light. So I still think they've kind of failed on that side of things. I still see people who want to take pictures and film videos taking off the side panel, but you know, it is an incredibly beautiful side panel they've created that I do really love, and I'm glad that they've made it, because I do want to use this case as one of my personal cases at some point, definitely. But yeah, so that was my review of the 760T. If you like the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already and you want to see more of my videos. So like the video I'm going to do on the 730T and all the videos that I'm going to be doing on the acrylic tubing. But thanks for watching.